Hello folks, and welcome to the Blue and the Gray, a very old game from around the late 80s, early 90s. A Civil War game, obviously. As you can see, it's a very primitive game, and I'm just going to play the first round. This game is probably the grandfather or grandmother of what we would call today the Total War series of games. Because while you see the big map looks like a board game, the actual battles are what we would call tabletop, or what H.G. Wells, I believe, called small soldiers, where you actually have toy soldiers that were given, each one represented a certain amount of men, a certain quality, a certain morale, and you could play, American Civil War game or American Revolutionary game, Bunker Hill, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to play right now is a standard game. Like I said, one round. I'm going to be the Federals. I'm going to be fighting the Confederacy. It's horrible special effects. And I am doing a post voiceover because while doing this game, I just kept on going over the place. As you can see, you could turn off the music. You could turn off... You could turn on Fog of War, you could turn on unit supply. So if your divisions from the north get into the Confederacy, the south, they'll start having supply issues if there are too many of them put on each other. A single division could get away with getting deep into the south, or a single Confederate division could get away going deep into the north. But you can't have too many of them stacked on each other. Now, as you just saw, the Confederacy has more active infantry and men than the North. That's because the people who made this game used I don't know how to say this. They basically said that the reason the Confederacy had more troops was the North had a lot more troops tied up in California, the western frontiers, watching out for Indians. That was their rationale for giving the South more troops. Now with the Fog of War on, I really can't see where the enemy is. And the divisions of the Confederacy, which is run by the artificial intelligence of this game, have really two settings: aggressive, defensive. If a division's defensive, it's going to stay in its own territory. If it's aggressive, it's going to head right into my territory. And it would be the same as if, I turned it around and I played the Confederacy. The Union troops would either be defensive or offensive. It does mean the artificial intelligence isn't very smart because it's just charging. And if there's a bunch of divisions together, it will all go into the same battle once the battle starts. Now, as you can see, certain divisions have certain ability to move. Cavalry have more points to move than infantry. You also have boats and trains, which are released as the game goes on. I don't think you could buy them. Now, there is also training, which, if recruitment, you see down there to the right, which I will sooner or later push a button on. But basically what happens with recruitment is you have so many men assigned to you each month based on historical records. You can delay those troops to give them better training. I think it's 3 months. And they show up with better quality and better morale. You don't have to do that, and in fact, when I played this game, I rarely did that, because by 3 months, the game was over. Another way to increase the men's quality is to win win battles. The more battles you won, the better quality the men who survived the battle were, the higher their morale, until you have elite troops. Now, by then, the divisions, depending on how you handled them, could be pretty small because they lost men. Now, you could put replacements into those divisions, But new men meant lower quality. If you have 50% elite and you add 50% people who have no idea what they're doing, you're going to get average quality and medium quality. There I'm moving the cavalry, and of course, I don't have enough points to get over, over the mountains. And here I am fiddling around. I haven't played this game in so long. I'm talking about I haven't played this game since probably 2001, 2002. I had an old computer at the time that handled this game. It has to run on DOS. I actually found this game a year ago or so for free. Or did I have to pay for it? I don't know. It was pretty cheap. And I put it on my computer and I played a campaign just for the fun of it. And it brought me flashbacks, but it also brought me good flashbacks and bad flashbacks. The special effects sound horrible on my old computer. On this computer, it doesn't sound as bad. But my old computer, it sounded really bad. I really didn't have a speaker, a very good speaker on my old computer, which was an IBM compatible. And I think it was called an ACM, American Computer something or other. I don't even know if they exist now, or is it AMC, American something company? American Machine Company? I don't know. It just was really horrible. The game's not horrible, but you could see in the game the structure of future games, whether it was tactical games or strategy. You're about to see the tactical games are going to show up soon once we get the infantry out of Washington, D.C. out into across the Potomac into Virginia. And the fog of war, like I said, is on, so I can't really see the other side. Now, the terrain does affect how battles are fought. Urban, though, to be honest, the maps don't really seem to look that different. They're all green. Even if you fought in the middle of a city, I think there's maybe a few fences. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's like, oh. And in this one, fences and hills do give you defense and offensive capability because you're higher and you're on a hill. It gives you an advantage. Also, rivers slow you down. Bridges allow you to cross a bridge faster, but you can destroy a bridge by an artillery bombardment. You can direct actually your artillery in a single. If you pick them in single individual units, you can actually set a target and shoot at it continuously. There was a flaw with this game in that even when the fog of war was set, if you were in a battle, your artillery could still see the enemy. So when your artillery starts shooting but you can't see anybody, you knew that they were near. And you can even see where they were. Now I'm looking at the recruitment screen, and see there's nobody available to recruit. Now I couldn't try to increase that. And once again, this is just the screen showing my armies. I only have Grant. I'm not even sure why they had this. I think it was more of a flavor kind of thing. You can make different armies and all that stuff. And this is a two-player game. You could play there. Level high, level low, enlisting. Basically training. So by pushing high, it would take your soldiers 3 months to train, but there'd be a much higher quality. And I'm just doing that for purposes of showing how it works, because once again, I'm only playing around. I didn't even bother to save this game. But it was a very good, very early game for those people who were into the tabletop, little moving little toy soldiers around. Just like there was the early games. I think there's games even earlier than this, Apple IIe. I played on Apple IIe. Games that did American Civil War and World War II. And I remember the American Civil War games were very fascinating because they had fog of war, but they also made it so they had this option that says radio set off. So if you were, example, Lee on the Confederate side or Grant, I remember playing the Battle of the Wilderness as Grant, and you couldn't see the Confederates, and unless your headquarters representing you as Grant were close enough to other Union divisions, you couldn't see them either. And orders would only be transmitted to other generals if you were close enough to them. So when you got close enough to another general, you would say, "This is the victory point I want you to go after." And then you left him, and he went try to find another general on the battlefield. It was actually quite interesting. In some ways, a little more realistic than modern games, because as a general, you did not see the whole battlefield. And in some ways, nowadays, it's like I could see the whole battlefield. I could see almost the whole battlefield in some cases. And in one cases, when you can't see it, you're still controlling all your troops as if they're all the Borg. But on those early Civil War games, you couldn't. That was a fascinating concept. But also, they also had I had World War II games, which was the Eastern Front and the African Corps, and that was fascinating too, because you could play two players on all those. And what you did was you would do your moves, and then your friend or opponent or brother would do his moves, and then you'd both play both sides would carry out their moves, and you'd watch it. And then you'd put in your moves, and if you're doing the honor system, you'd actually leave the room so they could put in their commands. And of course, they could not see your commands without, either starting the battle, or accidentally going to your screen. You could go and say, "Wait, you're on my screen now. What's going on?" So here, I'm ending my turn. Or am I ending my turn? No, I'm looking at, But what's going to happen is going to end my turn. The Confederates are going to move. Now, if this had been a human player, he would be going next. And now here's an event. There was historical events throughout the game. I never saw all of them because, lo and behold, like I said, the Civil War would end in 3 days. I mean, not 3 days, 3 months. Because you would do so well as a human being against the artificial intelligence. Once you knew how the computer fought its battles, that was it. And the computer wasn't as advanced as even Total War, which, Shogun Total War, they taught the computer the art of war. They actually put in the rules about, high ground's better, cavalry works well against this type of unit, but not well against that type of unit, stuff like that. This one, the impression I got was a two-punch system. They basically told the computer, look, you have troops here, keep the artillery behind the infantry, have the cavalry move around, but mostly try to hit in two places. Move some troops over here, hit this side of the battlefield, and move troops over here and hit this side of the battlefield. So you'd be hit one part of your line, try to strengthen that line, and then the computer will hit you in the other part. Once you realized what it did, you ended up using tactics that would have been from the Napoleonic era. You basically just made one big line, protected your flanks, and let the Confederates come to you, or the Union, depending on which side you're playing. Now here I made a mistake. I attacked these Confederate units with all the units. And in this game, the initial attacker takes the space if you win the game. But all the units who supported it don't move forward. So when you play this game, you wanted to leave a few units unused. So after you won the game, they still had movement points that can move forward. In other words, when you started an attack, the first unit that went in took that space. All other units, if they were involved in supporting the battle, could no longer move. So after my first turn, after this actually is a second turn, second round, what happened was the Confederates counterattacked against that one unit stuck in the middle of nowhere. So what you're going to see is me screw up about a game I should have known years ago. I would never. But 1990 when I first started playing this game? So more than 20 years ago? 30 years ago? Wow. I would have been 18. Today I am 17 or 18. Today I am 48. So that would have been 30 years ago when I first started playing this game. So yeah, see, everybody's getting involved. I'm a little confused. So I'm trying to remember how to play the game. Because I'm like, wait, I want everybody to join in. So you get the name. Every time you have a battle, you get the name of the battle. See, now I'm saying everybody has to join the fight. And I'm like, oh no. Afterwards, even after I did the last yes, I'm like, oh no. I should have known better. I should have known better. No. Fog of War, of course, I can't see what the Confederates have. It is all cavalry, though. Just to let you know, it is all cavalry. And I am a very passive player when it comes to military games. Whether it was Shogun or Rome or any other strategy, I like to try to get 3-to-1. I remember Shogun, most of my armies were always like 50 to 40% archers. About a third cavalry, a third infantry. Well, archers are also infantry. You get the idea. I mean, like spearmen and all that. But so here I am. I'm setting up the cavalry first. After I set up a few of the infantry line, I start to realize I should look at the terrain. And there's a little green square next to the map up there to the right, next to 10th Cavalry, Sabre, quality poor, morale fine. That when you opened showed you terrain, showed you where all your units were, and so on. It was because you start to realize, oh wait, I shouldn't actually set up my troops in formations until I know what the terrain's like. Because I realized, oh, there's a river running through it. And even while I'm putting the cavalry there, I'm thinking, wait a minute. How will I support my flanks if there's a river going through? You know, put cavalry on the flanks, but you're going to end up on the wrong side of the river. You know. So I realized that the side on my left narrowed down, which was better from a tactical point of view, because it meant the farther south I got, the smaller my front would be, and the more troops could be lined up on my flank facing the river, which would slow down any attacks, allowing my troops to pour fire into them. So at this point I'm realizing, yeah, I want to go onto the other side. So I'm going to grab those guys, right click, and I'm going to move them to the other side, and then I'm going to start setting up my troops there. And I'm going to use move peace. Now, at the beginning of every battle, you were able to set up your units, any formation, any place you wanted, within a certain area of that edge of the map. Just like people setting up their formations of their figurines or their artillery pieces or the little cavalrymen in a tabletop war game. So this is in some way an attempt to take those small soldiers and put them into a computer game before Total War did it. Most games at this time period with a flat little square, this looks like a board game kind of game. Now they tried to get away from that in some games by making little two-dimensional sprites. Riflemen, artillery, cavalry, with special effects and a grid. And there is a grid on this. There's a grid on both this one and the big map. So they tried to get by that. But in the end, the war games split up into two. There's the guys who like the politics and economics and strategy, which I can't pronounce properly, and the big about the wars, the top down. And that's where you get like the Hearts of Iron or the Victoria 2s, which is not really about wars, but the big ones where they have a lot of idea about economics, and you have weapons development and politics and submarine warfare and all that. Then there's the art of war guys who like the battles, and that's your Shogun and your Rome and your Empire and Napoleonic wars and the art of war and the art of, was it the art of naval warfare? Was that even Apple II or was that Mac? So nowadays, when you look at most games, most of them are what you'd call the top down. But they try to have it both ways because they don't like the little icons that look like the NATO icons, the symbols NATO used. They like to have little men and little tanks and little lorries and trucks and all that. And in some ways it looks kind of weird. Also, it can eat up your computer power like crazy. So what you're seeing is me trying to line up the soldiers, even though I don't have the grid on, and I could put the grid on if I wanted to. But I'm doing it by eye. And I'm trying to get their formations. And I'm going to want to also figure out protecting my flank, which is what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure out, I want to protect both flanks. My flank on that side is against the edge of the map. I really don't have to worry about anybody attacking that side. But the one on the river has to have a certain amount of overlap, some units that go along the flank to cover the river. You'll see. I mean, you're watching it right now. So yeah, you always had those little units. Now, as the war continued, if you fought a campaign, that little 4-guy unit, a lot of your units are going to end up looking like that. But they'll also be elite. Now remember, each one of these individuals represent 400 to 1,000 to 1,600, so on and so forth, depending on artillery, all that. Now you also notice that I did change the uniforms. The reason for that is because the infantry have 3 types of uniforms. 3 types, not uniforms, 3 types of weapons. The musket, Harper's Ferry, and Springfield. And each one of those had different quality and different range. And depending on how you set it up, you could set it up so the guys with better range were in front, and guys with medium range was in the middle, and guys with short range were in the back. So what happened is that as approaching troops approached your line, the firepower being sent against them would slowly increase. Or you could put the long range in the back, short range in the front, and medium range in the middle. So when the enemy units approached your line, they would suddenly get hit by a wall of lead all from everybody in the line, which would be just devastating. Remember, a lot of these units also represent morale. They have fine morale, quality, so on and so forth. And morale was affected by the deaths within the unit, the destruction of units around you, And also, if a unit basically lost total morale, it just fled, ran away to stand someplace and cry to itself. So when a unit ran through, retreating through its own lines, it affected the morale of the units around it, causing panic. The AI also itself would cause its own panic. One of the advantages of having a computer artificial intelligence play a game against you is that it is a math whiz. It knows exactly what everything represents, the terrain, gives defense and attack bonuses. It knows the range of all the weapons. So when you start to maneuver, it can see the benefits and disadvantages of its own position compared to yours. And it will change its position, its formation. But the scary part about that is that it doesn't do it one at a time. Its whole line will suddenly become an unorganized mass as each one of those individual units goes to its new position. It literally looks like it's panicking, which is something, once again, Hearts of Iron 3 players would understand what I'm talking about. Because the computer is instantaneously reacting to everything you do. You move one unit, one artillery piece, one anything, and some of the enemy line will become this one big mass of confused soldiers rearranging themselves, even while under fire, even while they shouldn't do that at all. I mean, if they're in a better position than you are, they shouldn't be doing anything. The computers, military computers, need to be, at least for game purposes, need to be designed to act, not react. They should say, this is the best action we can take, and we will stick to it no matter what the other side tries to do to trick us out of it, or to take that advantage away from us. Because when a computer is reacting to you using all that math, simultaneously always rethinking and redesigning its tactics, it's doing nothing. It's literally doing nothing while you're marching towards it or shooting into it. It's not achieving any of its goals. It's like it can't focus on anything. It's OCD. It's too focused on this. It's too focused on the now and not focused on what's happening 3 or 4 turns away. Chess computers could do that because they've been programmed for all the moves. They're not thinking. This game is nowhere near chess game. And then I push play. Now you could also push autoplay if you got bored with this and let the computer decide who won. Or you could push retreat. Sometimes retreating is a pretty good option. Now you see there I'm looking at the explosions caused by the artillery. Seems the artillery started shelling a position, which suggests that the artillery has detected enemy units. So I realized, okay, I'm going to have to stop soon because I now know where the enemy units are. And I don't want to go right into them. I want to use the terrain to my advantage. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go, this is where I want to stop. So I'm deciding, okay, this is where you're going to go. And this is where you're going to go. And the problem is that I know the cavalry moves faster than the artillery. And the artillery moves slower than anything. So I want to make sure they're not jumping into each other or running into each other. And that they're getting space so they can change their formations. Because I want those soldiers who I'm selecting right now to be in a line. Well, not really a line. They're going to be in a line facing the river. They kind of look like they're a column. but that's only in relative, because they're changing direction compared to the rest of the front line there. Now those guys are going to be reserves, and I'm putting them on my right flank or the left side of the screen because you never know. Like I said, the computer has a habit of throwing two punches, splitting forces into two, trying to get along two axes of attacks. The thing is, what I kind of forgot is that it's only a cavalry division. And they're not going to do very well against artillery and this many men with rifles and muskets. Just not going to work. So now seeing the cavalry, I'm telling everybody to halt. Because I'm going to build my formation around the fact that I have cavalry in the middle of the river here. So what I'm going to do is halt the line roughly, it's not a straight line, but I'm going to haunt it because like I said, I kind of forgot that I was only dealing with cavalry. Slowly I'll realize, yeah, it's only a cavalry division. And what I'm trying to do is trying to make a line that allows me to kind of creep up closer to the river while protecting my artillery. So I'm going to keep most of these guys here. But the people near the river are going to kind of sneak closer to the river, sneak south and a little bit towards the river to try to shoot at these guys, while the artillery also shoots at them. This is going to be a one-sided battle. It isn't the battle I wanted to show you guys. But yeah. War, even in war games, doesn't usually go very well for people. And you can control this army by 3 modes. Single, you could fiddle around with single individuals. Group, or all. So you can move the whole army if you just got sick of fiddling around with it. Excuse me, sorry. Don't mean to sound like I'm sleepy. But I recorded this, and then I'm doing post-commentary because my commentary wasn't recorded during it somehow. I'm not too sure why. Because everything should be working. I'm going to have to check later on. Because when I did my submarine Silent Hunter 3, there's nothing wrong with it. So I'm kind of wondering what exactly went on with this, but you can see I'm lining them up. And I'm going to also use the cavalry. The cavalry is a lot of fun. First I want to get them out of the way, of course. But cavalry is a lot of fun because by this time period, yes, they had sabers, but they also had repeating rifles and Colts and combines and just handguns, big handguns. So they could dismount and really put out a large amount of fire. The only problem is they only had the ammo they had with them. In some ways, all the troops did that. I mean, you'd have wagons of ammo following them and passing out munitions. But with cavalry, the whole point was that they weren't being dragged down by supply lines. They were going around scouting, reconnaissance, bringing back information. So in reality, they would be able to put a high rate of fire for a very short time. It would, in Gettysburg, when those Union cavalry ran into some of those Confederates, the Confederates thought there was more people there than there actually were. There's the artillery doing its piece, and there's the Confederate cavalry either fleeing temporarily or just getting out of range. Now its computer is going to be kind of confused. It's not going to know what to do. It really is kind of like, okay, we don't have artillery, we don't have infantry. What are we going to do about this? And I'm going to have to try to find a way to engage these guys in battle, because my infantry aren't going to be able to chase it. So I'm going to have to try to bait it. And I'm building up a little line there because I want to cover that flank from the cavalry. Because if they go up there and swing around and attack me on the side, then I want them to run into lead. But also I plan to use my own cavalry to try to figure out if I can't bait them. And once again, remember, these cavalry can dismount and switch to actual, long-distance weapons. Which is what I've just done. I switched one of them to their combine. And, see? Carbines. Carbines? A combine sounds like something used to farm. Carbine sounds like part of an atom. Carbine. There's an I-N-E. But I don't think I'm pronouncing it correctly, or that I can hear the difference. But you guys know what I'm talking about. Basically small little repeating rifles. It does all the thing. So what I've done is I've dismounted them, and they're protecting the flank there. I used them pretty much as the goons most of the time I played this game. Now what's going to happen is, once again, I'm going to creep forward with the infantry, move the artillery a little bit closer to attack them. But also I'm going to try to bait them by using the cavalry and having them cross the river once or twice. I think I'd do it twice, but right now I'm just trying to get it so if I could see if there's any way my infantry could get a shot at these guys. They know they're there. If you look at the corner of the line there, the literally 90-degree angle, the soldiers are actually pointing their rifles towards the water. They know they're there. They just don't have the range to shoot them. Now at that point there was a few sounds. And I think it could have been Confederate cavalry taking pop shots at my guys. But I didn't see my guys respond. Because if they're in range to shoot my infantry should be in range to shoot back at them. But at one point I'm pretty sure I tried to check. Yeah, see, I was fiddling around with the artillery cannons because I was like, I could order them to shoot a certain area. Just continuously shoot in the same area. Yeah. And there I'm counting. So my infantry can't shoot at them. But the cannons can. And you could tell the cannons to fire at a fixed area. For example, if you see a bridge and you know somebody's going to have to come across that bridge, you could start shooting at it. Not only damage it, but if anybody tries to cross the bridge, even if you can't see them, you'll hit them, probably. Or you could just let the artillery do it at once, because like I said, the fog of war doesn't seem to affect them. But right now, their cavalry are hurting. Their units still exist, which means not that each unit still has enough men. Once all the men in a unit is dead, all you're going to see is dead little soldiers all over the place. I remember playing this game, and at the end of it, there'd be nothing but dead little soldiers all over the place. Because the AI just didn't know when it was time to retreat. And you could wipe out thousands. You can make some of the actual battles of the American Civil War look pitiful in comparison. You could wipe out whole armies, which is why, like I said, this game would last 3 months. And I'm not saying it was a bad game, it was interesting. But unless you're playing against another player, it was really going to be a very short war. Here I'm creeping forward, staying in lines. No blitzkrieg here, no running around. That's probably why I'm so bad at Hearts of Iron 3. I let the AI do most of the battles, and it's not really the most brilliant AI either. But I'm always afraid if I try to do something brilliant, my AI opponents are going to figure out, they won't be brilliant, they'll just be smart enough to say, well, if we do this, we cut him off and he's trapped, The enemy doesn't have to do something brilliant, it just has to do something common sense. So, I mean, if you want to really get involved, it depends on your opinion, but for example, Montgomery in World War II in North Africa, he wasn't brilliant. He just refused to attack the enemy until he had everything set up his way. I remember Churchill, they're talking about Churchill saying to Montgomery, General Montgomery, attack. And Montgomery's in Egypt, and he's going, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to attack until I have like 3-1 advantage, and I have all the fuel I want and all the munitions. And he refused to attack unless he had everything he wanted. Period. And it's not brilliant, but he probably saved a lot of lives most of the time. There's a few situations where he probably agreed to do something where he shouldn't have, but I could say that about everybody. I mean, General MacArthur during the Korean War, he did some brilliant stuff, and then he also got fired for other things he did and things he said and things he wanted to do, which weren't going to happen. We're a democracy. There's certain things we're not going to do. So yeah, the artillery's pounding them. They're trying to decide what to do. They're kind of spread out. Now this would have been a good time if I'd had a larger cavalry force, probably to go after them with the sabers. Just get those guys in the north, and if the others tried to show up, they would have been hit by the artillery. There is no, to my knowledge, friendly fire in this, but the artillery are kind of OP, which in real life they were also OP. And if in this game, if you could get to them with cavalry or infantry, they would die pretty fast. But if you couldn't get to them, they could do devastating amount of work on you. So at this point, I decide to switch to cavalry. I tell them to mount up, but they still have their weapons in their hands. They still have the Colts and the carbines. That's how you say it. Carbines. Not carbon or combines. It's carbines. Yeah, I finally figured it out. But they're going to rush across the river as cavalry. And that's what look at how they react to that. Like, woohoo, somebody we can attack. So I go, nope. And nope. And that's the thing. Artificial intelligence, computer games, the first ones were made by people who probably knew or understood the American Civil War or World War II, but they didn't read. It's one thing to understand what the generals did. It's the other thing to understand why they did it. I mean, that's why the best historians of military history are generals or colonels who could tell you this is the training these American soldiers had and these American officers had, and this is what their thinking was, and this is why they used these tactics. Those people would be better off making computer games, computer simulations. That's what they do, you know. They play war games. The Pentagon plays war games based on the past. And when it finds a system or a theory that might work, they test it. They just don't play war games. They replay the last wars. They replay the Korean Wars. They replay battles. They replay campaigns. And if it comes to almost the same result, they say, this system is reflecting reality of how officers think, how casualties are received, how weapons work, and so on. If a computer plays a game again and again, a program plays a game again and again, and it gets the same results, and it's a war game, and it's a sim game, that probably proves that whatever theories, military theories were used to design it are also kind of true. So one way historians can figure out things is by playing games. Now, there's always the people who play games for the what-ifs, which is different from the counterfactuals, which are like, what the hell did you say? What-ifs, what if Hitler won the war? Yippee. The problem with that is that you have to figure out, what would Europe look like if Hitler had won the war? Okay, first, you have to get Hitler to win the war, but that's not part of the question. People don't care about how Hitler won the war. They just want to see what Europe would look like if Hitler won. That is a what if. That is a sci-fi alternate history novel. Historians talk about counterfactuals. What if Hitler had never been born? That's not asking a question of hey, I want a setting for an alternate history novel where Germany won, so I have to work backwards. This is working forward. You say, okay, Hitler is never born. His mother actually does have that abortion, which in real life she wanted to have and was talked out of by a doctor who was a friend of the family. Wow. Okay, so you don't have an answer to the question. You have a question, and you have to go through and find the answer. Now, as you see on the screen, I've dismounted the cavalry. They've got out their guns, and since they're actually pretty close, some of those cavalrymen got a little close. They're about to get a little... There's about to be a little fight. Because once that troop's over there, now I feel a little more secure. So I'm going to have the cavalry infantry reform into a line, and I'm going to have the cavalry move forward, and they're going to start exchanging fire. And the artillery is reformed up. So yeah, if you want to do real, alternate history, you don't say, well, what if this happened? You ask a question, what if Hitler won the war? That's a question, yes, but that doesn't actually explain how he won the war. You want to really do a serious what if. You say, what if Sherman had been shot off his horse during the Battle of Shiloh? Because from what I understand, he lost 3 horses, because people kept on shooting at him. Now, Sherman, in the Battle of Shiloh, for those of you who don't know much about the American Civil War, Battle of Shiloh, the Confederates basically surprised the Union in their camp. Sherman put up some defense, just long enough for other people to set up what they called the Hornet's Nest, which is a whole bunch of Union troops got together, put up some barricades, put some artillery facing outward, and just start blasting the Confederates. That allowed Grant to get the rest of the army into a sunken road and another defense. Now, technically, Grant still lost the battle, and there's a high amount of casualties on both sides. And the only reason I think the Confederates didn't continue was because I believe their commander got shot or died in the process. And Grant ended up in a desk job for I don't know how many months before he was allowed to be given a command again. If it hadn't been for Sherman, there had been no Hornet's Nest. If there had been no Hornet's Nest, there had been no real defenses to keep the Confederates from just pushing the Union completely off the battlefield. And during that battle, Sherman lost 3 horses. They got shot from right under him. What had happened if he had been shot? One of those horses rolled on him. There would have been no Sherman to keep his men from running, well, Sherman's men wouldn't have run, but falling back. There'd probably been no Hornet's Nest. It would have been probably not as bad casualty-wise, because actually if the Union troops had fled, there'd probably been less people shooting back and forth. But from a political point of view and a militarily point of view, that would have been even more devastating. And Grant was given a desk job. There is no reason he would have been ever brought back if it had been that much of a battle, that much of a defeat. Now, this is why I was upset about leaving those cavalry away by themselves. I didn't set this up properly. The cavalry attacked, and everybody supported the cavalry, which means everybody's movement points were done. So nobody was there after my battle to move forward to support the cavalry. So now the cavalry is being attacked by a whole bunch of Confederate divisions. So what I'm doing is trying to set it up. They're dismounting, they're getting their weapons, and I'm going to put them on a hill. Not that hill, but another hill. And then I'm going to adjust them individually so that each one of them is getting the bonuses that a hill gives you. Because the hills give you bonuses on your ratings of attack and defense. So cavalry have a good attack when they're using sabers. Defense 1, but no firepower. The problem is that attack 3 only works when you slam into the enemy. If you're just sitting there, they're shooting at you. You're gonna die. So what's happening is I'm going to put these guys on a hill, and they will be getting attack bonuses and defense bonuses, which means they're going to be very, very hard to kick out. Fortunately, their quality's average, and while their morale's fine, that's not going to help them in the end. They're actually going to start being hit by artillery even while the infantry starts to attack them. Ironically, near the end point of this battle, I realized that their artillery's gotten too close. I will mount up everybody with sabers and go attack. Now, technically, spoiler, I still lose this battle. But I only lose it by maybe a dozen or so. 40, 50 men. I lose about 600 something men. The Confederates lose about 600 something. Most of that's infantry and maybe a few artillerymen. So that means while I'd have to retreat, the next battle, if I decided to fight it, which I don't, they would still have a lot less men. And some of those casualties would have been artillery, which is going to hurt them a lot. I'm trying to line up the hill now that the setup is over. So now I'm going to play, and they're going to march down there. Then I'm going to fiddle with the third line of men. So I'm looking at the terrain. And I'm like, okay, I like where I'm going to place them. I'm going to place them next to a bridge. But that's where I'm placing them right there. It's almost if I knew the audio wouldn't work and I'd have to re-record it. But yeah, they're going to set them up. Or I'm going to set them up. But that last line, see where the ridges are? The little, the round, the hill? That's where the bonuses are. If you're on top of the hill, you're on flat ground. There's no bonuses up there. So what's going to happen is I'm going to switch to single and start poking around to see who's got the bonuses and who doesn't. Because I want everybody to get as much firepower as they can. So here I am trying to figure out who's got the bonuses, who doesn't. Because you can't figure it out by group, you can only figure it out by single. So there as I'm pointing at it and trying to figure out, okay, he doesn't, because he is on top of the hill, but not on the side of the hill. On the slopes is where the bonuses are. So what I'm going to do is start fiddling with the soldiers, let them all get into their positions, and then before the Confederates show up, I'm going to try to start fiddling using single mode to get them all over. Because I can't, the problem is I realize at a certain point there's no way to change their formation without screwing up the rest of the formations. So I have to do it the long way by grabbing each individual one, saying you go here, you go here, you go here. It's like, darn it, the whole point of being able to grab them by groups is to make things simpler. So I start pointing at things. Go, okay, you go here. And you go here. And you go here. And you go here. And you go here. Then I go to the other side, and I do the same thing. Now, after that, I realized, well, that side's probably not going to get the blow of the Confederate troops showing up. So then I moved two of them back over to the other side, but I had plenty of time because the Confederate army is swarming at me like a bunch of bees. Because the idea of moving in formation has not occurred to the Confederate AI. Also, I'm pretty sure the darn thing cheats. But the Confederate AI basically decides we're going to go into the middle of the battlefield and you're going to do this formation. So its units individually just swarm out there, running over their artillery, or their cavalry runs over their infantry. And this is where I notice, one side has more troops than the other. And unfortunately, that's not the side where the Confederate blow is going to hit, so I'm going to move you guys over here. And there we go. So now, the rest of this battle is me grabbing individuals singularly as they try to run, because the Confederates have artillery and it starts hitting us before the infantry actually hit us. Actually, I think the infantry shows up right before the artillery starts shooting at us. But the end result is I have to tell them my guys start to break and run. The ones being hit by the artillery. And I have to tell them, go back, go back, go back, go back, go back. And like I said, at a certain point I realized we're being killed by the artillery, and the artillery's come way too close, and their infantry aren't protecting them at all. And that's when I decided, go in, kill them all. And everybody gets on their horse and pulls out the saber and goes in. And then I realized I'm in the thick of them. I should have had them move back and retreating. I see that the artillery's starting to hit me. And then I dismount them, give them the rifles back, and let them start shooting point blank at everybody who's near them. Now, this is going to be, because they got repeating, look at that. 2 units of Confederates are already dead. So, yeah, I'm trying to find where those artillery are, because I'm like, they're shooting at me and I can't see them. But they'll get closer. See, that little wiggling with the rifles means they're fighting hand to hand. Now, see, people are starting to move. I'm like, no, I understand you're being hit by artillery, but you have to stay in line. This is very much, the 300. You need to stay in line. And I forgot I was on group, but it's like, you gotta stay in line, guys. You gotta stay disciplined. You have to stay in line. So I'm trying to make it so everybody stays. Now, as you can see, some of the Confederates are already broken. Too many casualties. They've already lost 2 units. But my guys are starting to reeve too because they are artillery shells. I'm like, no. I understand huge numbers of you are being wiped out. But you have to stay. The thing is, if you push retreat, a certain percentage of your guys are also going to be killed. And you have no control over that. It's almost like a random number generator almost. Gee, what, The random generator gods. The random number generator, RNG gods, as they say. So, it's better to fight as best you can, and then when they end the battle, well, you're going to be forced to retreat and you're going to lose a few more people also. But the end result is at least I'm taking a lot more of them with me, because if I hadn't battled at all and just retreated, I would be the one receiving casualties. Now, sooner or later, I'm going to notice their artillery's gotten too close. And I'm going to go, hey. 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 I'm trying to tell them, stay in place. Keep formation. Point the right direction. Point your guns in the right direction. But yeah, see right there, I'm like, oh, wait. That's artillery down there. Is that artillery down there? That's artillery down there. They've actually gotten their artillery close. So I'm like, wait a minute. It takes me a while to figure it out, because you can see I'm still kind of, you stay in line. Stay in line. Hold the line. But at a certain point, I'm like, wait a minute. See how those Confederates who had run away are kind of like facing away from us? Those are guys whose morale has been kind of shattered. They ran away, but they don't want to leave the battlefield. But in some of these, later on, mid-war games, if you're in mid-game, when you both have like dozens of divisions involved and thousands of men, these battles will take up the whole map, and when you start seeing the dead bodies and the guys rushing away, you could start mopping them up. You could literally destroy a whole army. And yet this is when I'm switching. I'm like, get on your horses, get out your sabers. Time to attack, because attack has 3 with your sabers and your horsies. And get in there. And this is where it becomes a big fat mess. And at this point, I'm just trying to direct the groups to go after the artillery. Just get into the artillery. Just go after the artillery. Go after the artillery. And I tell them attack at will, which means they'll basically, instead of trying to stay in formation, if anybody's around them, they will attack that person. So they'll probably go after the infantry as much as they'll go after the cavalry, but... At a certain point I realized, oh god, there's more cavalry more artillery across the water, and there's infantry starting to swarm in, and it's like, okay, switch back to your fire weapons, switch back to the weapons and start shooting and defend yourself. Because, unfortunately, they're kind of stagnant now. They're not actually moving, and the attack bonus doesn't really do well. They're not actually near. So in the end, I think I just ended up killing more of their infantry than I ended up doing as their artillery. But it looks like a few of their artillerymen, at least, they're not able to handle sabers. But now I'm switching to... And this will be the last moments of the battle. Yeah, see, that's the infantry suddenly charging in. Not in formation, not in any disciplined manner. They're just saying, okay, we got him now, boys. Get him. And when you're the Confederacy, the Union does the same thing. It's not really... So now there's going to be a bunch of smoke as everybody starts shooting at each other. And the battle ends. Because my guys finally decided they're not going to stay anymore. So I lost 683. 7 units. Don't know how many they lost, but I have a history. The history that keeps track of the battles. That will tell me, how many the Confederates lost. They lost 225. So I lost more like 660 men more than they did. And more people due to disease. It also shows disease, as you saw. So, yeah. That was 2 rounds. And that's it. I mean, there's the Confederate cavalry showing up. But I'm not going to play a whole campaign. I'm just going to leave it here, folks. I mean, it was a very good game for the time period. It obviously gave birth to a lot of other games. But that's really it. I mean, there's nothing else to go by. Like I said, also, there's World War II games and American Civil War games at the time that even older were better. So, I'll see you guys. Bye-bye.